my hands were deep in concrete next to this guy who had a family, and it's, 8 o'clock at night, and we'd start at 6 in the morning. And I just remember looking and saying, this is not what I want.
Welcome back to the Missoula podcast. In studio today with Brandon Smith and Chris Nichols. How are you, man?
I'm great. It's
Dude,
awesome
thanks for
to
being
be
here.
I'm so excited to be here.
It's been a long time coming. We've been looking forward to this one.
You've been knocking on my door for a little while, and I'm glad that finally could get in here.
Well, let's start there. Why did you make us chase you for so long? Playing hard to get?
I guess that's it. I think probably just scheduling for one thing. But yeah, so
You're a busy guy.
I got quite a few things going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Chris, what brought you to Missoula? You're not a native, I presume.
Yeah, I'm not a native. I moved here in 2012. Came in from Boston. And
Go Sox.
Yeah, go Sox. Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but just felt like this was the next place to be, that God had a plan and purpose for us here. And so my wife and 2 kids and dog just kind of loaded up and drove west.
Being from Boston, like how is Missoula, Montana even on the radar, even heard of, known about? What was the connection?
Yeah, that would be part of the probably longer story than we have for this morning, but basically a sequence of events. Just Missoula came on the radar, and we just felt like there was some kind of plan or purpose for us here. So it was clear enough that we decided that we would sell our place in Boston and come here.
Tell us about, did you grow up in Boston? And what did your folks do? And tell us a little bit about what that was like as a kid.
Yeah. I often call myself an American mutt, just because I've lived a lot of places. I was born in Memphis, moved to New Jersey, lived in Boston, Houston, Denver, Colorado Springs, Chattanooga, back to Boston, then to Montana. So,
well, easier question. Where haven't you lived?
Right. Well, thankfully, a couple of years ago, I finally kind of checked off my 50th state. So got to Alaska, and
Awesome.
so I've been to every state at this point now. And yeah, we have an amazing country, and there's something to appreciate about every place.
Do you have commitment issues? Is that why you've lived so many places? Do you want to dive into that?
No, I don't think that's it. I don't think so. I think some people might think that. I mean, have an adventurous spirit, so I love new beginnings. I love new starts. I love to start things, lead things. And I think maybe there's a component of that there, but I'm kind of hoping Montana will be my home for the rest of my life.
Where do you think that adventurous spirit comes from?
What's so funny is when you asked me that, the first word that came in my mind was hatchet. You guys remember the word, the book Hatchet?
Middle school,
from
elementary school?
I think it was maybe 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade. I remember reading Hatchet about the boy who, he was in a plane crash in Canada somewhere or something like that. And he kind of had to survive off the land. And I just remember as a kid that just sparking this love for adventure. Like I wanted to be that kid. And I think that I've never thought about my life kind of living that out over the last number of decades of just loving the wilderness, loving the alpine zone, loving adventure and survival and all of those things.
So what have you done specifically career-wise along those lines of adventure? Or where has that led you?
Quite a few different things. I mean, I've worked a lot of different jobs over the course of my life, which I'm very thankful for now because I've kind of had my hands and feet in quite a few different industries over time. In college, I was able to work as a river guide. So I worked on a Class 4 river and was able to be a guide. I worked as a guide, ended up doing that for about 8 years, and then ended up moving to Boston and worked for REI there for a while and really loved the outdoors. And then in Montana, just love the access to the outdoors. But industry wise, I've been in ministry for a long time. So I've served in a variety of different organizations, launched and led some different churches that kind of all had kind of an outdoor focus, just because that's one of my passions is the outdoors. So just kind of integrating my love for the outdoors into the things that we did. So Yeah. So, but industry wise, was a river guide for 8 years, worked for REI for 7 years, worked for Bob Ward's here in town for about 4 years. And I've just always loved the outdoors and kind of the outdoor industry.
Chris, I've seen some pictures of the rivers you floated just on social media. I've seen some of the mountains you've climbed. What's one of the scariest moments you've had in the great outdoors?
Yeah. Probably the scariest I've had multiple scary experiences. The one that kind of comes to the surface for me is back in 2018, I got to climb Mount Rainier, and it was my second attempt. The first attempt, we got caught in a major whiteout at like 14,000 feet right below the summit. But the year we successfully summited, the next day, me and a friend drove to Portland, and that night we climbed Mount Hood. And this is kind of a funny story because
Wait, so you did the two back to back?
We did them back to back.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Machine. Wow.
So on Mount Hood, you start at midnight because you want to climb it while the surface is solid. And so we decided to go to the open mic night, at the local bar before this climb. And I decided to get the barbecue sampler plate, and so for some reason in this moment, I forgot that to-go plates existed. So I felt like I had to eat the entire plate. So that night we're climbing Mount Hood, and I had overate, and I felt just horrible. And we're climbing Mount Hood, and there was a guide with he was leading a client, and they were going so slow. So I was like, hey, is it possible for us to pass you? And he said, yeah, but you better be quick. So we had kind of gone up above him, and the surface was so hard. It was like I was having to just kick really hard steps and climb above this. And if you slip, you slide down into like the Bergschrung, which is kind of the end of the crevasse of the glacier, and drop into a hole. So anyways, it was terrifying. It was probably the most scary experience because I wasn't roped at that point.
Yeah.
So
I can relate. I've done Mount Sentinel a few times.
Yeah.
And like if you're going up the face of the M, it's really slippery. That concrete.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I get it.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, Chris, I want to direct our conversation a lot towards leadership and teams today.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a passion of yours as well. What is it about building organizations, managing organizations, and making them effective that's appealing to you?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think that I'd say one of my greatest joys is just helping people. And I really love to see people learn and grow and succeed. There's something incredible in kind of mentorship or coaching when you see like a light bulb go off in someone's mind, or them to learn a new skill or a new tool or a new principle, that it's that aha moment that, wow, this is going to revolutionize the rest of my life. So I'd say that's it for sure.
Why did you, maybe a better question would be, at what point did you start having these aha moments and wanted to give that away?
I think that would definitely be the second component of why I love to do what I do. I think both of you are learners and growers. You like to learn and to grow. And I think we've all probably had those moments where we said, wow, if I had learned this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this would be so helpful. And I think probably for the rest of our lives, we'll all have that. We hit our 40s or our 50s or our 60s or 70s, and we're like, oh, now I get it, kind of deal. And I think to be able to help others learn those things sooner and quicker is just such a incredible joy. And so I think my own kind of commitment to constantly learning and growing myself really lays that platform for wanting to want to help others to do the same.
Well, help me flesh this out.
Yeah.
So we're three guys sitting here that I agree that we love to grow and to learn.
I feel like once a week, I'm like, I wish I knew this 10 years ago. Like it's
Yeah,
all the time
absolutely.
now. It's all the time.
Yeah, right.
Do you think that's a natural component that people have, or is there circumstances or events that happen in people's lives that turn them into this person that wants to learn? How did we all become like this? And
Sure.
we're not to your level by any means.
Oh, no.
You're consistently one of those guys
Yeah.
that I know is always pushing. So
Mm-hmm.
flesh that out for me if you can.
Yeah, I think that's a challenging question. I think that I think about kids, right? You have the classic stereotype of the kid who's why, who asks all those questions. But that's actually their specific type of intelligence, is that they're kind of what's called logic smart, where the kid that asks all those questions is just their brain is wired where they long to understand. So I think as we think about it and we've experienced, there's some people whose natural personalities and dispositions are inquisitive, and they are always, from their childhood been inquisitive to learn and grow. But I think you pick up the point that we all have to have, I think, a point in our life where we discover something where that aha moment is deep and profound enough that we then either ask the next question or we have the next thought that says, wow, if this truth changes my life, there's got to be other things out there that could drastically improve my life. And I think that starts to plant that seed that then hopefully gets watered and fertilized and, kind of continues to sprout and grow. And so I do think it takes someone kind of having a significant moment where they realize, wow, this is life-changing. And then that's the seed that then gets cultivated from there.
Was there a specific mentor along your journey that has helped shape and form how your leadership style, or how you want to, like you said, help people breathe life into that?
I've definitely had some people invest in my life over time that I'm grateful for. But I think actually the key motivator in my life was feeling like in some ways I didn't have that. I think my passion for mentorship and developing people actually developed because when I reflected back on my life, that I didn't have someone really significantly come alongside of me and say, I see potential in you. I do have people that, spoke positive words, encouraged me, things like that. But I did not have like someone who just really, that I would look back on and say, man, they really poured into me intentionally, consistently over time.
Chris, I'd assume you're the type of kid you described. You were the kid always asking why, inquisitive, just natural curiosity. When you were young, what was the dream? When you grew up, what did you see yourself being or wanting?
Yeah, great question. As a kid, I loved to tinker in the garage. I would go out there and just take things apart or build my own skateboards. I loved working kind of with my hands, and my dad didn't have a background in any of that kind of stuff. So he had some tools in the garage, but basically I loved to build things. So then that kind of sparked that I really wanted to. I was kind of torn between being an architect and being a civil engineer, and I eventually got a degree in construction management. And now I feel like so much of my life makes sense in
Mm-hmm.
that regards, like that my brain is such that I love vision and seeing the big picture, but I'm also wired to be someone that can see the small details that need to be put into place. You think about a construction manager, they have to have a vision of the structure of the building that they're
Right.
going to create, to build, but they have to be able to think about all the steps and stages and components that have to go into place to see that come to fruition. And oftentimes, you'll meet people that are either vision oriented, but they aren't detail oriented, or they're detail oriented, but they can't see the vision.
Right.
And I think something that I've discovered about myself that's unique is that I can kind of carry both.
Yeah.
And that's really helped me a lot with the various things that I've done, or what I'm currently doing, working with teams or working with entrepreneurs and helping them to bring their vision into reality, or to find the pieces that need to get into place to see that come to fruition.
I mean, maybe way off here, but it almost sounds like
Mhm.
from the days tinkering in the garage, tearing the skateboard apart, putting
Yeah.
it together, seeing how it works, and even your college degree
Mhm.
really are a metaphor for what you do today in
Right.
terms of people, projects.
Yeah, very much so.
development. Yeah.
Very much so.
Where did the right turn happen where you're going construction,
Hmm.
management, and then nope, I'm gonna be in ministry? How did
Right.
that turn happen?
I entered my freshman year of college, kind of thinking that the standard path for every human was, at this point in time, back in the late 90s, it was, graduated high school, you went to college, you hopefully found a girl and got married, and then you got a job. And then, my dad, worked for 35 years for AT&T. And, at that time, people, they found a career and they worked it for their lifetime. And I remember as a freshman in college, just thinking that was my path, but I also kind of felt trapped by that. And so during college, I did some internships and a co-op program where I helped build Mile High Stadium in Denver, and I got to help build a big expansion for Intel in Colorado Springs. And it was fun, but as a 21-year-old, I was working alongside, guys in their 40s, 50s. And, as a college student, my goal was to get out of college without debt. So I was working really hard. I've always worked really hard and oftentimes held multiple jobs. And I just remember, there was one moment where my hands were deep in concrete next to this guy who had a family, and it's, 8:00 at night, and we'd start at 6 in the morning. And I just remember looking and saying, this is not what I want. Like, I don't want to be, if I have a family, I don't want to be away from my family 14 hours a day just to make money. As a college student, single college student, that made sense because it helped me to pay off my loans and get through school and things like that. But really, I think going back to like when I worked as a river guide, it was through an opportunity where I was working in a Christian camp and living there and doing some construction and stuff. I just really grabbed a heart for loving to work with people. And that was kind of the start of the shift. But I've continued to utilize construction in various avenues since then. So
At what point did you realize that you could make a career and support a family by working with teams, working with people? And I know it was that moment of being your hands in but like, when did it become a reality? Like, oh, I can actually make this work. I'm good at this.
I think all of us probably on a consistent basis are kind of evaluating where we're at and what we're doing and where we're going. So I don't know that I necessarily would say that there was a point when I said, okay, this is what I'm doing and going to do. And I feel like even at this point in my life, I have pretty open hands towards what the future holds kind of in that. I think that's one of the beauties of growth is that as you grow, new opportunities come about and come your way, and then you evaluate if it's a good fit or not. I mean, that's one of the beauties, I think, of aging, right? Is that you hopefully grow to understand how you're wired and where your skills and where your strengths lie. And then when those opportunities come, you can hopefully more quickly say, that's not a good fit at all. Or, wow, this seems like a good fit and a good opportunity. So I kind of like the adventure of kind of living with that open hands of, and just trusting that the opportunities will arise when they need to.
One question for you, and then we'll go to our rapid fire questions. Sure. You've been a part of all these different organizations, structures, ministries, activities. Mm-hmm. Looking back at your career at this point, what would you say one of the greatest misconceptions with leadership is? When people hear leadership, when people hear development, personal development, what's that guard that comes up in people, that misconception?
I definitely think the biggest one that has shifted a lot in the last number of years, but still has a lot of room to grow, is the misconception that leadership equals authority. I think a lot of times when people think of leadership, they think of titles and positions. You can be an incredible leader and not have a title or position that gives you authority. And you could have more influence than everyone else on the team, than everyone else on staff. I think that's the common misconception, is that achievement or title or position equals leadership.
Okay, sorry. So one more question.
Yeah.
So with leadership, rather than a place of authority, a place of influence, what is the skill set someone needs to develop to have influence? Appropriate influence, like,
sure.
The right intent influence.
I think the greatest skill that any human, I think on the entire planet could develop. That's a bold statement.
I'm ready for this. I'm ready.
Maybe I'll take that back. Everybody cliffhanger, I think one of the greatest skills that any human could develop is growing in their EQ, their emotional intelligence. EQ has the potential to just transform your influence in such a powerful, significant way. There are people that are incredibly bright, who have extremely high IQs, whose EQs are very low, and they have position, but they don't have much influence, or their influence is greatly limited. I think EQ is one of the most foundational, essential qualities for any human, and definitely any leader to develop.
Expand on that a little bit.
I was like, forget rapid fire questions. We'll come back to that. Like, you're saying some great. Yeah.
How does one go about starting the process of developing EQ, and what does EQ look like practically?
Sure. Well, I think EQ, for one, there's a lot of people that aren't even familiar with it. When I was 22, I believe, I ended up going to a week-long conference called Strengthening Your Interpersonal Skills. And I learned about effective listening, about grieving, about confronting, about conflict, about all of these like soft skills, and it was so extremely helpful. Just opened the doors to so many things. That expanded my paradigm in so many different ways. Like grief, for instance, I used to only attribute grief to like the loss, the passing of a friend or a family member or something. And then all of a sudden I can grieve a relationship, or grieve the loss of a job, or grieve a challenge in life, whatever it may be. But EQ really comes down to your ability to read and understand your own emotions, and to then manage them appropriately, and to be able to perceive and look at others and receive their
Mm-hmm.
emotions and then manage appropriately. There's a proverb that's so powerful that I think just fits this so well, is that, the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, and a man of understanding draws them out. And through that strengthening your interpersonal skills workshop, I was exposed to this concept called bubbles, which is, just a simple thing. When you come up on a pond or a lake or something and you see bubbles, it's an indicator that there's something below the surface. So a lot of EQ is learning to see those bubbles and read them. And so, yeah, I think it's
Have
just
you
so
always
important.
had a high EQ, or is that something you've had to work on and develop? Or
I would probably say my parents said I would say I had a horrible EQ as a kid. I definitely do not think I did. It's incredible just to think over the past 20, 25 years of my life, how I'm almost constantly learning and growing in that area. And it really takes some of life's hard knocks to learn and to grow in those areas, and to be in lots of different relationships and with different personality types, and just learning to read body language, learning to see beyond the words, to see the posture of somebody, their eyes, their mannerisms, all of those kind of things.
Years ago, I read Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yep.
And rocked my world. I didn't realize how low, I realized everything that was wrong with me from reading that book. But what's cool is how you can take a test essentially on yourself at the beginning of the book, read the book, and then 90 days later, go take the test again and just see your own growth and how you perceive yourself differently. And so anybody listening that's more curious, I highly recommend Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
That'd be my number one suggestion.
Great book.
Let's jump into the rapid fire questions,
Sure,
and then I can't wait to get back to more leadership. So, Chris, what was your first initial memory of Missoula, Montana?
First memory I would recall is I had just got in here from Boston, and the next day I went for a run up Mount Sentinel.
Hey, careful, it's slippery up there.
And I saw 14 deer in the first 3 minutes. And moving from inner city Boston, where I'll promise you there's not many deer in town, I was just blown away by that. And so that was my first memory.
What's your favorite coffee spot in Missoula?
For me, coffee is definitely, coffee shops are definitely environment. And so I'm going to go with Canby.
Favorite restaurant?
I'm a pretty simple guy, so I'm going to go Mackenzie River, the hot Hawaiian pizza.
What is the weirdest thing about Missoula?
Uncontrolled intersections. I mean, what's up with that? Like two streets coming together in an intersection and there's no stop sign. You just go for it. It's so Montana.
What zip code do you live in?
59803.
What do you love most about Missoula?
There's so much to love, but absolutely the outdoor opportunities. 2 days ago, I got to ski Mount Sentinel for the first time. It's kind of a bucket list item for me. In a month, I'm going to be surfing the wave downtown. To be skiing 2 days ago and in a month be surfing a wave in a landlocked state, can't ask for much better than that.
Chris, is there a book that's made a significant impact on your life more than Hatchet?
Shoot, you took my number one book. I've read a lot of wonderful books. The book that comes to mind for me is there's a book called A Work of Heart by Reggie McNeil. And it really fits with what we've talked about so far of really it looks at the formation of a leader. And it helps you to, it's a faith-based book, but it helps you to kind of step back and look at the components of your life and how they have shaped you for where you are today. So it really is pretty powerful.
Let's talk about the formation of a leader.
Yeah.
How does one get into, for the audience, what you're doing now is, I think you're doing a lot of different things. You probably have many irons in the fire, but coaching and working with entrepreneurs and a life coach, but a business coach and kind of a whole person coach. How does somebody get into that like you did? Or maybe just how did you get into it?
Well, for decades, I've just always loved investing in people. It's probably one of the things that I've enjoyed the most, and whether that's life or spiritual mentorship, whether it's uh, taking a lot of people into the outdoors and teaching them how to climb or mountaineer or do all kinds of different things. I've just always loved creating opportunities for people to grow. And I'd say it was probably 5 or 6 years ago that I just started to think, wow, I love doing this in so many different arenas of my life. What would it look like for me to step into doing this specifically in the business context? And so I ended up enrolling in the kind of Maxwell Leadership Certification Program, kind of got certified through them as a speaker, trainer, coach, do DISC assessments and consulting in regards to that. Over the years I love teaching and working with teams and teaching leadership principles and team building skills and communication skills and things like that. And so that would be how I kind of got into it.
Do you have any specific examples of some of the work that you've helped people, or maybe the most extreme example of somebody that you started working with and where they're at now?
Yeah.
Something that you're proud of?
I love that over the years that I've had the opportunity to work with people in so many different industries. And I think what amazes me is just how much progress someone makes through having a coach. I'm someone that is a pretty self-disciplined, ambitious person. Like I have lists upon lists. My goals for this year are pretty vast and would be overwhelming for a lot of people. But I'm very driven. But even for myself, having a coach has had a significant impact on me and my follow through. We all have ideas, thoughts, ambitions, wishes, hopes, dreams that oftentimes just stay in our heads and in our hearts for weeks, for months, for years, for decades. We say, oh, I always wanted to do this, or I want to do this. And the beauty of coaching is that there's this built-in kind of accountability to make progress day by day, week by week. And with quite a few of the people I've worked with, it's just incredible to see over time how they grow through that consistency. And really that's what it is, right? It's oftentimes many of us don't make giant leaps in like growth or changes, but it's the small consistent changes over time. And then all of a sudden we're like, wow, I'm a totally different person than I was before.
It's compounding interest.
It's compounding interest. Yeah. Compounded growth. Yeah.
What is something new about leadership or growth that you've learned recently?
I was just going to ask you, what have your students, those you're coaching, investing in, what have they taught you? So, yeah.
Yeah. Two similar questions. One of the things just recently, I'm always thinking about different things. Stephen, you know that I'm always thinking about things and having ideas and thoughts. And one of the thoughts that was kind of hitting me the other day when I was working with one of my clients was the phrase came out of my mouth, like, be sure you're not confusing the strategy for your goal or your goal for the strategy. So what that really kind of meant or looked like is when you have a goal, you develop a strategy on how to get there. But sometimes we start to all of a sudden become committed to the strategy when it's not working and we lose sight of the goal. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of a thought I've been like chewing on a little bit the last couple of weeks.
What is a growth strategy that you put into your life or helped other people with that you don't find to be helpful any longer?
Ooh.
Wow.
That's a tough question that I don't find helpful any longer. Wow. That kind of turned a corner that I wasn't expecting. Cliffhanger.
I don't know if that's a really good question or a really horrible question.
I'm not sure either, but I just wanted to throw something hard at you.
Oh man. Wow. I might have to marinate on that one a little bit to see like a growth strategy that I found no longer to be helpful.
You abandoned the strategy.
Yeah.
Brandon, bail me out here with my bad question.
Yeah, I'd have to think more on that one, Steven.
Okay.
I remember we had someone on an early episode that said they struggle with the idea, the phrase of it's okay to not be okay. And how,
yeah.
So when Steven asked that question, I actually thought about that concept of how often we can use that as a crutch to continue to just be stuck in the mud. Like it's okay to not be okay. And sometimes you have to abandon that concept and all right, it's time to turn the page. It's time to not be okay and time to be okay.
Yeah. I think one that pops into my head from what you just shared with that is just, it's kind of both a strategy that I've abandoned, but actually I don't think we ever necessarily like fully abandon strategies. We modify them in ways, so one, for instance, is that because I'm like wired as an achiever, an ambitious person, I'm really having to learn to not evaluate success strictly through achievement. And part of the modification is just learning to celebrate wins along the way, how to celebrate the small victories.
You don't define success as a plotted point. You look at the trajectory.
Yeah. It's, the phrase, like it's about the journey, not the destination, that kind of idea that, I think vision and passion, if it gets us moving, then that's a win. Because we don't really know until we start, like what we're going to encounter. It's great to set out like a strategic plan and with milestones and benchmarks because they push us, but we have to hold those things kind of with looser hands because it's not until we start the journey that we realize some of the speed bumps that are going to come along the way, or the potholes or the setbacks or kind of the right turns, the left turns, those kind of things. So
I've seen so many people that get so focused on that goal, that destination, because you don't know what you don't know. But once they start, they're so committed because they're so disciplined to that goal.
Yeah.
But that goal is actually taking them further away from what their intent was. At the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
and that would go back to what I was saying about like, don't confuse the strategy with the goal. And I think there's things we have to cling to tightly, but there's also other things that we need to be a little bit looser on, because as we grow as people, then all of a sudden, like our perspective on the situation or this perspective of our dream might shift and change.
So it can be really helpful. Like if you're just, micro, short-sighted, to have that coach, have that, leader in your life, be able to speak in your life and say, hey, hold on a minute. This pothole's coming, the speed bump.
Yeah.
Let's correct course and still get you to your goal.
Yeah. Well, most of us get stuck in our head, right? We're always thinking and processing all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of a coach, is being able to kind of flesh those thoughts out.
Is there a specific person that comes and finds you for coaching, or what is the most likely thing that somebody has in their life or doesn't have in their life when they seek you out to help them?
As I mentioned, I worked with a variety of different people. Like a lot of times, it's someone that is an entrepreneur that's trying to get something launched, and they know that, perhaps they know that they struggle with organization or follow through, great intentions, or they're an idea guy or gal, and but they're just not sure how to kind of get there, or they had great intentions for this week, but then all of a sudden it's 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks, and they just realize that they need that built in, like accountability for that. So I think there's that. I've worked with several like small business owners that, they have small teams and they're the lead of the organization, and apart from their spouse, they need someone that's not like one of their employees to be able to kind of process things, or to have like an outside perspective on the way that they're handling kind of situations, how they're leading, how they're managing, organizational structures, kind of things like that. And then really, I think any organization that wants to see their team grow, like I've really found over the years that loyalty is really built a lot on how well a team feels invested in. So I think, leaders that want to see their team grow and develop, and in turn that produces more loyalty.
So Chris, let's say that you encounter a young 20 or 21-year-old guy or gal like you were, that has no idea what the future looks like and is just getting started in their journey. What are some of the best pieces of advice that you could help guide them on their journey as they start to maybe pursue a life?
Right. I would say I'd go back first to what we talked about at the beginning is try to develop a core value of growth. And that might simply be by committing to, once a year reading a book about leadership, about communication, about growth. Just recognizing that that's going to expand your paradigm and help you to grow. Second thing is to specifically and intentionally reach out and try to find a mentor or a coach that can come alongside of you and help you to grow.
Do you have a quote or some sort of catchphrase that you hold on to that, it's one of those things you can write on the mirror or look at every day, or that just kind of drives you?
I think one of the quotes that has stuck with me for many, many, many years is that you cannot consistently perform in a way that's inconsistent with the way that you view yourself. And this is a quote about potential, that most of us, our perception of our potential is so much lower than what our potential actually is. So, I don't have a whiteboard to draw a graph here, but
we need to get that in the budget.
If I could, that's what I would kind of draw and show, is that
Hey, if you're listening right now, like, subscribe, comment, help us generate some revenue to get that whiteboard. Thank you.
But yeah, I'd say that quote I am so intrigued by the concept of potential. And I just know that all of us have a much greater potential than we give ourselves credit for.
Chris, just this week I had coffee with a mentor of mine. He's going through this journey of realizing he went away to a conference and came back, and he's finding that his greatest fear isn't what he thought it was. That his greatest fear is himself, that he paralyzes himself from moving forward because he's afraid he's going to disappoint himself. And it's like a whole nother level to imposter syndrome of I'm going to fail me. I'm going to be disappointed in me. So therefore I'm going to stay where I'm comfortable. And it's just really interesting concept that I've been thinking about, something very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe last question from me, Chris, as we wrap this up, because this conversation so good. But what's next in Chris Nichols' life? What is the goal or strategy? I know you said earlier you had loose hands, but is there any summit that you're looking to climb here shortly?
Career-wise?
Metaphorically, or
you take it wherever you want. I know you're going to climb some peaks, but yeah, just the next big thing that you want to achieve. And I know maybe that's not the right word, but
I think I'd simplify that down to just continuing to grow myself and to grow others around me. I think a lot about what does it look like to be faithful with what I've been given. And that could be my relationships. It could be my skills. It could be my perspective on things. And so I think I'm at a point in my life and career where that's kind of my greatest ambition, is to just be faithful with the things in my care, from my kids to my spouse to my jobs, my ministries, the relationships that I have, all those kind of things. So
last question.
Yeah.
It's become one of my favorite questions lately. If you're able to put a phrase, a statement on a billboard here in Missoula. You got 100,000 people going to drive by and see it this week. What is the one thing that would fit on a billboard that you would say to our community?
Wow. That's a big statement. Maybe it would go, gosh, I could go a lot of different ways with this. If it's in the context of leadership and what I do, it would probably hinge on that quote, just that you are capable of far more than you realize.
Powerful.
It's awesome. Chris, thanks for your investment into so
Absolutely.
many people in this community. And thank you for being a wild man and an adventurer.
Making time for us,
Oh,
coming in.
yeah.
This is awesome.
It's good to
We
be
did
here.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much,
Now you
Chris.
can check this off your list. It's done.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.